There were supposed to be 4 bodies in the cold room. I had logged all 4 myself. I had checked each name against the intake sheet, slid each steel drawer shut until it clicked, and turned off the light. At 3:11 in the morning, I turned the light back on, and there were 5. The 5th drawer stood open a few inches. Cold air spilled out of the gap like smoke off dry ice, curling around my ankles. And on the little card slotted into the front, in ink that was still wet enough to shine, was a name I had helped carry into the ground 2 years earlier. My brother's name, Nicholas Reyes. Danny had been dead for 2 years. I stood there reading his name over and over, and the only thing keeping me on my feet was the one rule that mattered more than all the others. If anyone in the cold room calls you by name, you may answer them out loud. You may not go to them. I need to back up, because if I just tell you how that night ended, you'll decide I lost my mind out there in the dark with the dead. Maybe I did. But I want you to understand how ordinary it all was, right up until it wasn't. I want you to understand that I almost walked to that drawer, that some nights I still wish I had. Let me start with the job. 2 years ago I was 31, 4 months behind on rent, and broke in the specific way that doesn't feel real until the power actually shuts off. I'd spent most of the previous year not working, not doing much of anything, and I couldn't explain the gap on my resume without explaining Danny, and I couldn't explain Danny without falling apart in a stranger's office. So when I saw the listing, night attendant, funeral home, overnights, no experience necessary, will train, I didn't ask why a place like that couldn't keep the position filled. I didn't wonder why it paid almost double what overnight security paid across town. I called the number and said I could start whenever they needed me. 70, maybe older, thin in the way of men who used to be big. He asked the normal things. Liable, yes. Fine being alone, yes. Squeamish, no. Then he leaned forward, folded his hands on the desk, and asked me something that stayed with me. Have you lost anyone? He said. Recently. I told him about Danny. I don't know why. Something in his face made it easy. He nodded slowly the whole time, and when I finished he said, "Good. That'll help you understand the rules." And I thought he meant the rules of the job, where the coffee was, how the time clock worked. When he shook my hand, his fingers were cold, not chilly office cold. Refrigerated. I told myself it was poor circulation. An old man in a drafty building. I've thought about that handshake a lot since. My first night, they didn't leave me alone. The man I was replacing stayed to train me. His name was Gary, 50s, heavyset, a voice worn down to gravel. He'd worked the overnight for 6 years, which I'd later learn was longer than anyone before him, by a lot. He moved through that building like a man who'd made peace with something he never talked about. He showed me the intake process, the loading dock, the prep room I had to keep locked. He showed me the cold room, 4 steel drawers set into the wall like filing cabinets built for something too large to file. Then, at the front desk, he laid a laminated card in front of me. It was soft at the edges from years of handling. The ink faded from being photocopied too many times. "These aren't suggestions," he said. "I know how they'll sound. Follow them anyway. I'm serious in a way I can't explain to you, so you'll just have to trust that I'm not a crazy person. I'll give them to you exactly as they were written. 1. Check the intake log against every toe tag before you touch a body. If a name doesn't match the sheet, leave it, lock the drawer, and call Mr. Vane. Do not open it to check. 2. The prep room intercom sometimes turns on by itself. Between 3 and 4 a.m., do not answer it. If it answers you first, do not answer back. 3. There are 4 drawers in the cold room. If you ever count more than 4, do not open the extra one. Turn off the light, leave the room, come back in 10 minutes. 4. If someone knocks at the loading door after 2 a.m. and there is no van in the lot, do not sign anything and do not open the door, no matter what they say through it. 5. If a body you have already logged is warm to the touch, write down the time and keep working. Do not do anything else. It will be cold by morning. 6. If anyone in the cold room calls you by name, you may answer them out loud. You may not go to them. Whoever it sounds like, you do not open that door. I read it twice. Then I laughed because I thought I was supposed to. Gary didn't laugh. "You'll want to believe it's a hazing thing," he said. "A joke on the new guy. I thought that too once. Don't test it. Not even once. Because the way you learn these are real is the way I learned, and you don't come all the way back from learning it that way. I asked him what happened to him. He got quiet, looked at his hands and said, "I had a wife." That was all. He never said another word about it. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. That's the part nobody warns you about. The waiting is worse than the thing. I clocked in, did my rounds, logged arrivals, checked tags, locked drawers, sat at the desk while the old building ticked and settled around me. I got good at telling the furnace from the pipes, the ice machine from footsteps, which is how I knew, on the 14th night, that what I was hearing wasn't the building. The intercom clicked on at 3/04 with a sound like a phone lifted off a hook, and then it just breathed, slow, wet, in and out with a little catch at the top of each breath, like someone who'd been crying a long time. I did not answer it. I put my hand flat on the desk and counted my own breaths against the ones coming out of that little metal grill, and I told myself it was a short in old wiring. At 3:58, it stopped. At 4:00 exactly, it clicked off. I didn't sleep that day. I started poking around after that. Not bravery. I just needed a reason it wasn't what it felt like. During the dead stretch of the night, I went through the back office, the boxes nobody had opened in years. I found an old Attendant logbook. Leather cover, water-stained. Entries going back decades in a dozen different hands. Every attendant signed in and out each shift. Ordinary. Except in the margins, next to some of the names, someone had written a single word. Left, over and over down the years. Left. And next to some names, nothing at all. Just a blank. I counted 11 blanks. 11 attendants who signed in one night and were never marked as having left, and never signed in again. Underneath the logbook was a newspaper clipping, brittle and brown, folded into quarters. Osgood and Vane wasn't the building's first name. The clipping was about the original owner, from 89, the man who built the cold room, dug it deeper than the rest of the foundation, into the bedrock, for reasons of preservation. The article was about his disappearance. He walked into his own funeral home one night and was never seen again. No body. The last person to speak to him said he'd seemed happy that week. Said he'd told them he was finally going to see his late wife again. I put everything back exactly where I found it. I told myself it was just an old building with an old story. But I noticed something on my way out of that office that I couldn't put down. A framed photograph on the wall. Staff of the funeral home. Dated 1901. Formal, stiff, everyone in black. There was a thin old man standing at the edge of the group. I only glanced at it, but I glanced twice. 2 nights later, a body came in warm. County delivery, an older gentleman, natural causes. Nothing strange on the paperwork. I logged him, checked his tag against the sheet. Everything matched, and slid him toward the drawer. My hand brushed his forearm. He was warm, not room temperature. Warm. The specific living warmth of a person who'd just fallen asleep, when according to the county sheet he'd been dead 2 days. I remembered the rule. Write the time, keep working, do nothing else. So I wrote it down. 2:47 AM. And I should have shut the drawer and walked away. Instead, I stood there 1 second too long. His fingers moved. Just the smallest thing. The index finger of his right hand curled inward. Slow, deliberate, like someone testing whether a hand still worked. Then it relaxed. I told myself it was a nerve, a muscle, gas in the tissue, all the things a body does after death that mean nothing. Then I looked at his chest, and his chest was rising, not breathing. There was no sound, no air, no fog on the cold steel above him. But the chest lifted, slow, maybe an inch, held and settled. Lifted, held, settled. Something under the sheet was keeping a rhythm that had nothing to do with lungs. I have never in my life wanted to do something more than I wanted to pull that sheet back and see. And I have never been more grateful that I didn't. I wrote the time again, underlined it, closed the drawer, and walked out with my legs not fully working. In the morning, he was cold. Room cold, drawer cold, right and proper. The day staff logged him for the family with no comment at all, and I understood that they knew. All of them knew. This was a place that had learned to run itself around a set of facts nobody was allowed to say out loud. I want to tell you about the loading dock. because that's the night I stopped pretending. It was raining, past 2 in the morning. 3 knocks came at the loading door. Heavy, flat, the sound of a fist on a steel roll-up. Deliveries came through that door all the time. So I checked the camera first, the way you would. The lot was empty. No van, no car, no headlights. Just wet asphalt shining under the one working lamp, and rain coming down straight and gray. The knocking came again, and a voice, right up against the metal, muffled but clear. "Got a delivery for you," it said. "Just need a signature." Every part of my job said open the door. That's the job. You receive the dead and you sign for them. My hand was actually on the chain before Rule 4 surfaced. If there's no van, do not sign, do not open, no matter what they say. I took my hand off the chain. "Come on," the voice said, softer now. Friendly. "It's cold out here. Long drive. You're gonna leave me standing in the rain?" I didn't answer. I've learned that much. You don't answer them. Then a piece of paper slid under the door. An intake form. The exact kind we used, filled out in that same wet, shining ink. I crouched down and read it without touching it. Everything was blank except 2 lines. The deceased's name, Nicholas Reyes. And under cause of death, 1 word. Soon. The door handle turned. Slowly. All the way to the stop from the outside, though that door locks from the inside, and there was no van and no driver and no one in the world who should have had a hand on it. I backed away from it. I stood in the middle of that loading bay in the dark, and I did not open the door, and I did not sign, and I did not answer. And after a while, I don't know how long, the handle turned back, and the paper under the door slid away, out into the rain, pulled by nothing I could see. In the morning, the intake sheet in the office had 1 more line than I'd left it with. A body received overnight. Signed for. I never signed anything. I never opened that door. I checked the cold room. 4 drawers. But that night, for the first time, I understood the counting rule wasn't about ghosts appearing. It was about something getting in. Here is the thing I hadn't told anyone. The thing that building found in me the way water finds a crack. Danny called me the night he died. He'd been drinking. He was smart enough to know it. And he called his big brother the way he always did. We'd been fighting about money for weeks. I was tired. I said, "Just get a cab, Danny. I'm not your driver," and I hung up on him. He drove himself home. He didn't make it. The casket was closed. My mother insisted. So the last time I saw my brother's face was through the windshield of a memory, saying something I couldn't hear. I never got to look at him one more time. I never got to say I was sorry. I told myself I'd made peace with it. I hadn't. I'd just buried it in the same ground we put him in. And the building knew exactly where that ground was. The night it happened, everything started normal, which is how I know it was always going to happen. 4 bodies, all logged, all checked, all locked. A slow spring storm sat over the town, rumbling, browning out the lights twice. I made coffee. I did a crossword. At 3:07, the intercom clicked on. But it didn't breathe this time. It said my name. Nick. I dropped the pen, because I knew that voice. I'd known it my whole life, across 1,000 backyards and hallways and Thanksgiving tables. "Nick, come back here. I need you to come back here." I pressed my own hand over my mouth so I wouldn't answer, because it was perfect. It even had the little smoker's rasp Annie got in high school, the one that never fully went away. At 3:11, the intercom went quiet, and I made my mistake. Not the one you're thinking. I didn't answer it. I got up. I told myself I was checking the drawers. Really, I just needed to be near him. I opened the cold room. I turned on the light. 5 drawers. The 5th open a few inches. Danny's name on the tag in wet ink. And I want to tell you exactly what I felt, because it's the thing that matters most. It wasn't fear. When you're standing in front of the impossible, with your dead brother's name 6 feet away and the drawer already open, the feeling isn't fear. It's hope. That's the trap. That's the whole trap. And it's older and smarter than I will ever be. It doesn't come for you with something you're afraid of. It comes with the one thing you want so badly you'd trade your life for a single minute of it. His voice came from inside the drawer now, low and close, out of the dark of it. "You didn't come get me, Nick. I called you and you didn't come." I waited, a pause. "Come look at me." "You never even looked at me." My knees went. I caught the counter. Because it was true. I never looked at him. I let the casket stay closed. And I have hated myself for 2 years for not fighting to see my brother's face one last time. And here it was, 4 steps away. All I had to do was open a drawer. I took a step toward it. I won't pretend I was strong. I took a step, and another. And my hand came up toward the handle, and the voice went soft and grateful, the way Danny sounded when we made up after a fight. There you are. Just open it. Stay with me. It's so cold in here. Stay. And Rule 6 surfaced from the bottom of me. You may answer them out loud. You may not go to them. That was the mercy in it, the one thing they let you keep. I didn't have to go, but I got to speak, so I stopped. My hand an inch from the handle, and I said the thing I'd carried for 2 years, the thing I never got to say into a closed casket. I'm sorry, I said. Danny, I'm so sorry. I should have come. I should have picked you up. I think about it every single day, and I love you, and I miss you so much I can't breathe sometimes. The voice went quiet. Then it spoke again, and it was no longer warm, no longer soft, no longer anything human, flat and patient and disappointed, like a fisherman watching one slip the hook. Then come here. And that's when I knew for certain it wasn't him, because my Danny, if he'd heard me say I was sorry, Danny would have forgiven me. That was who he was. He'd have said it wasn't your fault, man, and meant it. This thing didn't want my apology. It didn't care that I was sorry. It only wanted the drawer open. I turned off the light. You need to understand what that took. I turned my back on my brother's voice, in the dark, still begging me, and I shut the door. And behind me the begging changed into something that was not begging, a sound I've never been able to describe and have never once stopped hearing. I stood in the hallway with my forehead against the wall, and I counted 10 minutes out loud so I wouldn't have to hear the rest of it. When I opened the door again, there were 4 drawers. Locked. Danny's name was gone. I finished my shift. I don't know how. When Paula, one of the day managers, came in and saw my face, she went still, and then she said something quiet, almost kind, that lodged in me like a splinter. It found your soft spot, she said. It always does. That's why Gary picked you. That's why Gary picked you. Over the next weeks I put it together, because by then I couldn't stop pulling threads. The rules aren't there to protect the bodies. They're there to protect the attendant. And the thing in that cold room can't come and take you. The loading dock, the drawer, all of it. It needs you to close the distance yourself. That's its one limit. You have to walk to it, which means it needs a steady supply of people who will, needs the grieving. The ones with a loss so unfinished they'll cross the room on their own 2 feet. And the way it keeps fed is simple and it's monstrous. The attendant chooses the next attendant. Gary asked me my first night, "You lose anybody recent?" I thought he was making conversation. He was doing the real job, the one under the job. 6 years you buy yourself by finding it someone soft in exactly the right place. And Gary had a wife. He told me that much. I found her in those old logs. She came through Osgood in vain as a body, after a long illness. Gary took the night job 3 weeks after her funeral. I think he went to the drawer once. I think he almost stayed. And I think he lasted 6 years because every so often he handed it someone new to be hungry about. I don't hate him. That's the part I can't make peace with. I understand him far too well to hate him. I quit 2 months later. I couldn't sit at that desk knowing the safe way out, the way that lets you leave with your name off the tag, is to steer some grieving stranger toward the dark on purpose. I went to Mr. Vane's office to hand back the keys. He was sitting in the dark, hadn't turned a lamp on, and he didn't seem surprised to see me. He took the keys in that cold, dry hand and set them in a drawer, and he looked at me for a long moment with something that might have been sympathy. "They all think they're the first one strong enough to walk away," he said. "You did well holding the line at the drawer. Not many do." He smiled, and it didn't reach anything. It's a family business, has been a very long time. On my way out, I passed that framed staff photograph again, the one from 1901. This time I stopped and I really looked. The thin old man at the edge of the group, the black suit, the folded hands, the patient half-smile, was Mr. Vane, not a grandfather, not a resemblance. Him. The same man who had just handed my keys into a drawer, unchanged, 120 years apart. I didn't say anything, neither did he. I just left, and I heard the office door close softly behind me, and I promised myself I would never think about that building again. I trained my own replacement before I left. A young guy, quiet, decent, and I want this on the record. I did not ask him if he'd lost anybody. I made sure not to. I talked about coffee and time cards. I laid the laminated card in front of him and told him it wasn't a joke, and I did not go looking for his soft spot. I broke the chain. Whatever lives in that cold room, it did not get my help finding the next one. Last week I started a new job, a warehouse, forklifts and inventory, the most ordinary place in the world, all clean daylight. On my first day, they had me shadow the man I was replacing. Older, tired, kind, showing me the ropes. We stood by the loading dock waiting on a truck, and he made small talk the way people do. He asked if I had family in the area. I said not really, not anymore. Sorry to hear it, he said, easy and friendly. You lose somebody? And the floor went out from under me, because I've heard that question before, in that exact tone, and I know now what it can mean. I've been watching him all week, the way he moves through that warehouse like a man who's made peace with something. The way he went very still when I mentioned I used to work nights at a funeral home, and then smiled and said, "Small world. There's a laminated card taped inside my locker now. It wasn't there on Monday. I don't know who put it there. It has 6 rules I already know by heart, and a 7th added at the bottom in handwriting I recognized the moment I saw it. That cold, careful, old-fashioned hand. 7. Whoever trains the next one chooses who the cold room asks for. You already know how this works, Nicholas. You've simply changed buildings, and under that a signature. 2 words, dry ink, pressed hard into the lamination. Arvane. I keep telling myself I'm going to throw the card away. The trouble is, most nights I take it out and read it instead, because some part of me is still standing in that cold room with my hand an inch from the handle, and some part of me knows that if I found the right person, someone soft in exactly the right place, someone who'd walk to the drawer so I wouldn't have to, I could see Danny again. I keep the card in my locker. I keep not throwing it away. And every morning, the new man asks me how I slept. And every morning, I get a little closer to asking him about his family.